All right, how's it going? So I am making this video, this live stream. I'm doing a live stream. I'm making Smitten Kitchen's tall and fluffy buttermilk pancakes. So if people haven't been following along, I'm starting a podcast with my friend Perelman of Smitten Kitchen. It's a podcast about recipes. And we're going to be talking about recipes and what makes them work and what goes into developing them and the entire process. And as part of that, we're going to be cooking each other's recipes. One of our first episodes is about pancakes. So she made my pancake recipe, and I'm going to be making hers today. This is the tall and fluffy buttermilk pancakes from SmittenKitchen.com. She published this May 11th, 2017, but it is an adapted recipe from the 1896 Fanny Farmer cookbook. They were called, they were called griddle cakes back then. This recipe is very interesting. It's very different from what a modern pancake recipe looks like, in that the dough is really, really stiff, and it's almost like a biscuit dough that we're going to be frying in here. All right. I'm going to be following along the recipe because I've only made this a couple times, so I'm not really at the point where I'm just doing it from scratch. All right, 2 tablespoons butter. Let me grab all my ingredients first. Oh, sorry, no, I did already grab my ingredients. I grabbed them all before I started. What am I doing? All right, 2 grams of unsalted butter plus more for the pan. We're going to need 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar. We're going to need a large egg, straight from the fridge. We're going to need some vanilla extract, like that. We need some buttermilk. I'll be doing more of these live streams going forward, I think, just because they're fun and easy. Salt. I've got some salt. It says fine sea salt or table salt, which I don't have at home. I never do, so I'm going to use kosher salt. Baking soda and flour. All right, baking soda and flour. There's no baking powder in this one, just baking soda. It's a little too high. All right. Melt the butter. A couple tablespoons. Halfway in the bottom of a large bowl. An easy way to do that. So we do this. Okay, that's working. I don't know if that's the magnet. Actually, I think the magnet is actually reaching through and heating the bottom of this bowl through induction. I don't think that's just conduction coming through from the pan. It's heating up a little bit too fast for just to be heat transfer from the pan. All right, I'm going to melt this butter halfway. I don't know what that means. Does it mean melt half the butter or soften all the butter? Does it mean melt half of the butter all the way and keep the other half solid, or keep it, or get it all the semi-soft? All right, I'm going to get it all too. Well, I know we're going to be mixing in the sugar, and we want it to be homogeneous. So, and I think we just want it not hot enough to cook the eggs once we add the eggs in. So I'm going to melt the butter just till it's melted. My tablespoon measures. Measure too much. All of my measuring equipment always gets moved around. All right. Tablespoon. 2 tablespoons of granulated sugar once that's half melted. Let's say that's about half melted. 1, 2. Whisk in the sugar. This should leave the mixture lukewarm, but not piping hot. Lukewarm is also the temperature of the inside of the tauntaun. All right. Butter. Does that look lukewarm, but not Not piping hot? I think so. I don't know why I'm showing you. All right. Now we whisk in the egg and the vanilla. An egg. I like to crack my eggs on flat surface. I know there's a debate about whether you crack your eggs on an edge or a flat surface. I usually do a flat surface because I find when I do it on an edge, I end up breaking things or breaking shell into it. A quarter teaspoon of vanilla extract. All right. Whisking egg and vanilla, and half cup plus 2 tablespoons of the buttermilk. I'm going to use a liquid cup measure. I don't know if folks know this when you're measuring things by volume, but liquid cup measures that look like these and metal cup measures that look like these, dry cup measures actually measure things differently. A dry cup measure is generally not exactly accurate when you do it compared to a liquid cup measure. I really don't know why, but this is why you always measure liquids in liquid cup measures instead of dry cup measures. Half cup. Although that said, most recipes, most recipes are kind of fudged as far as like the specifics go, because what are the odds that the perfect recipe for a pancake is going to somehow align exactly with the types of units that we, the arbitrary units that we just decided are the right units to use. Generally, when a recipe calls like for, like a specific volume measure, it's not as specific as it pretends to be. The universe just doesn't work like that. All right, so I got my buttermilk in there. Salt, quarter teaspoon fine sea salt. So that's about a half teaspoon of kosher salt. And the baking soda. Half teaspoon baking soda. It's a really simple recipe. There's not much in it. So baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, it's a powdered alkaline. It mixes with the buttermilk and produces carbon dioxide gas, and that's part of what gives your pancakes leavening. What makes them rise, what creates the bubbles that makes your pancakes not just dense rubber discs. Baking powder, on the other hand, is a mixture of baking soda, a starch, a neutral starch, usually cornstarch, and then a couple of powdered acids. One of them that reacts instantly. So you can see bubbles coming out of here, but one of them that reacts instantly, the other one that reacts when you heat it. And that's why double acting baking powder, what they call double acting baking powder, is baking powder that raises the batter once when you add it, and then again when you cook it. But baking soda, you typically don't need to add. If you have a buttermilk pancake like this one, you got a lot of buttermilk in there, a lot of acid in there. That's going to react with the baking soda, so you don't always need to add baking powder as well. But I'm honestly surprised at how little leavening there is in this recipe. The egg, of course, helps it leaven, helps it rise as well. But it's a very sort of thick, doughy recipe. So we need a cup of flour. This is where volume measurements get really sort of wonky when you start measuring flour, because depending on how you measure it, it can be a cup weighs. It can weigh anywhere from 4 ounces to 6 ounces or so, depending on how you measure it. All right. Stir in the flour just until it disappears. So I guess like a good biscuit, we don't want to overmix this. We don't want to develop too much gluten. So you can see for pancakes, that is pretty thick. Very, very, almost like a cookie dough, Oh, I meant to turn on my toaster oven, because these go into the oven afterwards to finish cooking. All right. Heat a griddle over medium. That is done. You on medium? Yeah. And a good pat of butter. So I actually clarified a bunch of butter yesterday. So I'm going to use clarified butter instead of regular butter. The main reason you'd want to use clarified butter when you're frying something like pancakes or frying a lot of things is that the clarified butter is essentially butter in which the milk protein, the water, then the milk protein and the milk sugars have been removed. And so the little brown specks that you get when you heat up butter brown and black specks that you get when you heat up butter don't appear in clarified butter, so you get a much sort of cleaner fry with it while still getting that butter flavor. Okay. These are a couple of spoons. I get my spoons, the bottoms of my spoons and the tops of my spoons a little bit greasy beforehand so that I can easily deposit pancake batter, because I know this is going to want to stick to the spoon. All right, so she says, dollop in small mounds of pancake batter, about 1 tablespoons to make it even. Don't press them down too much. A little nudge is okay, but we want to keep the height. So when I make these, I did make a batch of these a couple days ago, by the way, and they're excellent. But when I make them, I'm going to try and keep them from spreading out too much. I do want them to at least be sort of vaguely even in thickness. From her, this is a 10-inch cast iron skillet, or maybe 11-inch. I think I can fit 5 of them in here. I think about fit 6 of them. You know, at home, the vast majority of the time when we make pancakes, my son, my 2-year-old, loves pancakes, and I don't make them from scratch every day. So the vast majority of the time when we make pancakes, we make them from like a mix. You know, Krusteaz, it's based out of Seattle, competitor to Bisquick, which is what my mom used to make. So making pancakes from scratch, it's very different, you know, because pancakes, when you make them from scratch, you want to mix the batter very minimally, whereas pancakes made from a mix, they add things like starch and mono and diglycerides and other things that help it emulsify and help it stay light, that prevent them from getting tough even when you overmix them. So pancake batter you make from a mix, you can like kind of mix it until it's smooth, whereas when you're making it from scratch, you really want to keep them as minimally mixed as possible in order to make sure that they come out nice and light. These are looking pretty good, huh? Just a little bit pale on those last couple. Do a little extra time. See how those are looking? Pretty good, right? So as Deb mentioned in her post, when you flip these, they're not going to look done. The middles are still going to be very, very kind of goopy. So let me show you. Like, this is like still completely raw in the center, raw enough that like you can split the two halves apart. In fact, I'll just kind of stick it back together. But they finish baking. They finish cooking through to the center in the oven. You know, they really are very much almost like biscuits. And I would say, in fact, you know, English muffins, which are cooked by cooking in a griddle like this, English muffins are to bread what these pancakes are to biscuits. That's what it sort of feels like to me. Tray. My kids use the trays for kids use my sheet trays for art projects and stuff, and so they always disappear from the kitchen useless. Right. So you can see these also get like a sort of spotty brown, you know, you can see that, as opposed to like I don't know, if you go to like a McDonald's and get a pancake at McDonald's, you get that like pure golden, even brown color. And you know, that color, it comes from the way it's fried, in fact. So when you're frying something like in butter, or when you're frying something in plenty of oil, what you're going to end up with is pockets where you're going to end up with areas where the batter is sort of in direct contact with the pan, but you're also going to end up with area where there's like a little rivulet of oil or maybe a little bubble of oil between the pan and the pancake. And that's what causes those sort of spots that you see when you fry pancakes in plenty of fat. If you want to get those like really perfectly golden, evenly colored pancakes, the trick is not to use any fat at all, or use as minimal fat as possible. So you can either use like a non-stick surface, or you can just put your fat in the pan and then really, really carefully sort of wipe it out with a paper towel so that you're left with just the bare minimum layer of fat in there. That is if you want that sort of even golden brown color on your pancake as opposed to a spotty brown color. I think there's benefits to both methods. All right, so that first batch of pancakes, I have it in the toaster oven now. It'll take about 5 minutes to finish baking, which is enough time to get this second batch of pancakes going. And maybe, I don't know, maybe look at my computer and answer a few questions if people have questions. If you pop some questions up right now, I'll walk over and answer them in a second. But I only have a few minutes because I got to get to another meeting soon. How many did Deb say this was going to make? She does say to double the recipe because it never makes enough. Ooh, I'm making these much bigger than she suggested. She said 14 small pancakes, and I think I got 9. So imagine these pancakes about half the size of what I actually made them. All right, so while that first side cooks, I will hop over and answer some questions. All right, folks. So again, for those of you who are joining, I'm making Deb Perelman's tall and fluffy pancakes, buttermilk pancakes from Smitten Kitchen, from her website, Smitten Kitchen. If you don't know who Deb Perelman is, you should. Smitten Kitchen. I'm doing this because Deb and I are starting a podcast together about recipes, and we're going to be doing an episode on pancakes. And so I am making her recipe, she's making mine, and we're going to be discussing all things pancakes and how we sort of developed our individual recipes. We'll also be talking about all other kinds of pancake recipes. All right, let's see. Compare and contrast cast iron and carbon steel pans for general everyday cooking. That's a good question. All right, so there's a few. The materials are carbon steel and cast iron. So this is a carbon steel pan. This is sort of a classic French style carbon steel pan, which is relatively thin. It has this wide flared lip. This is a French style skillet. This is what I would use for most of my everyday cooking. A cast iron pan, on the other hand, looks more like this. So you can see a difference, first of all, in the profile. Generally, carbon steel has a wider flare to it. This is not always the case, but as a general rule, carbon steel is going to have a wider flare to it, and cast iron is going to be taller. Cast iron is more brittle than carbon steel, which means that if you slam it down on the table, cast iron is more likely to break than your carbon steel is. And I have seen broken cast iron pans in my life, but I've never seen a broken carbon steel pan in my life. The other thing is that, well, there's a bunch of things we can talk about. So cast iron tends to be, because of that, cast iron tends to be cast thicker than carbon steel, especially modern cast iron is generally a lot thicker than your carbon steel pan. And so that means for a given pan size, your cast iron is going to be heavier. This has a bunch of implications. From a cooking property standpoint, as far as sort of heat conduction, heat retention, heat transfer, ability to heat evenly, carbon steel and cast iron are pretty similar. They're pretty similar materials. However, because a cast iron pan is almost always going to be heavier than a carbon steel pan, that means a few things. It means, first of all, it's going to take longer for it to heat up than an equivalent carbon steel pan. On the other hand, hold on, let me flip these over. On the other hand, because carbon steel and cast iron have such poor conduction, that is, they don't heat very evenly. So if I were to say place a flame, right? If I have like a star-shaped flame burner on my stove, for example, I would see a star shape of a star-shaped heat pattern in this pan because it doesn't transfer heat very well. Generally, the thicker the pan, the more evenly it is going to heat. So a carbon steel pan will heat relatively evenly compared to cast iron pan will heat relatively evenly compared to carbon steel pan, just because there's more material here and there's more time for it to heat up and more energy it can store at once. And so more time for that heat to distribute a little more evenly. That said, neither one of these is going to heat up very evenly. So if you want even cooking in cast iron or carbon steel, you need to preheat slowly. You need to move it around the stovetop a bit. Because carbon steel is thinner. It's also going to be more responsive to temperature changes, which means like if I increase the heat in my pan, the flame under the pan, the carbon steel will see that increase in temperature faster than the carbon steel will see it faster than the cast iron will. So generally I favor carbon steel for my day-to-day cooking. Most restaurants that use carbon steel or cast iron, they're also going to use carbon steel. Cast iron is the one that I like to bake in it. I think they're also the ones that are going to, because they're cast from a single piece as opposed to having these kind of welded on handles, they're going to last a little bit longer. So most of the carbon of the cast iron I have is vintage stuff that I've gotten, over 100 years old, or maybe within the last century or so. Whereas my carbon steel tends to be new. All right, these last pancakes are done. I'm going to throw them into the same oven, finish cooking through, and then we'll taste them after I answer one more question. Then I got to get to my meeting. All right. What about sheet pans? Aluminum or stainless steel or something else? All right, so sheet pans, I use Nordic Ware aluminum sheet pans. These were the ones I've been using these basically since my restaurant days. Either Winco or Nordic Ware, but Nordic Ware is the ones I use at home. These ones have won like basically every test I've ever seen. We did a test when I was at Cooks Illustrated on these that they won. I know they've done them more recent tests with newer versions of these that they've also won. They're an aluminum sheet pan that have a steel wire running through the rolled rim. I believe that's what they have. But in any case, they've got it's a pretty thick gauge aluminum. They've got a really nice thick rim, which is important because it means that they don't buckle and bend too much compared to a lot of other pans. I always pick aluminum for sheet pans for a number of reasons. Most recipes are designed around aluminum sheet pans. So the reason that can make a big difference is because aluminum is very, very conductive. So in an oven, this will heat very evenly. It'll also heat quickly, which is important for things like cookies. So for example, if I'm baking a chocolate chip cookie, I put a mound of dough here. If my sheet pan heats up very slowly and that heat energy gets transferred through the pan into the cookie slowly, that gives it plenty of time to kind of melt and spread out. And if you've ever seen cookies that are really sort of widely spread out, generally one of the culprits for that could be that they heated too slowly. So it could be that you did it in the wrong kind of pan. It could be that maybe you put like a silicone nonstick liner on here. That's going to greatly lower the conduction. It could be that you did it in one of those air pans, the pans that have a insulated space underneath. So generally, most recipes that I know of are designed to work with these aluminum pans, which transfer heat quickly, make sure that the bottom of your cookie sets, make sure that your vegetables, when they're roasting, they brown properly, et cetera, et cetera. So for sheet pans, aluminum is the way to go because of its really good conductive properties. All right, I'm going to try out one of these pancakes now. All right, so this is what they look like coming out of the oven. You see those, right? They really do almost look, let me pull one and show you the height. They really do almost look like biscuits, you see? Size-wise, yeah, people ask me about size-wise. Sorry, this is a half sheet pan. So this is about the biggest size you want for a regular home kitchen. Most home ovens will not fit a full sheet pan, which is basically double this. This is a half sheet pan, the biggest size. The ones I use most are quarter sheet pans. I also use eighth sheet pans frequently at home, but quarter sheet pans, half sheet pan. Oh, yeah, this is so I'm missing all my quarter sheet pans right now, but this is a half sheet pan. A quarter sheet pan will be one that fills up just half of this, and then this is an eighth sheet pan. These are the three sizes I use most frequently. All right, so let me cut this pancake open also and show you a little cross section. So again, very, very fluffy, very tall, very, very biscuity. Delicious, but they do have that. They have a lot of that buttermilk biscuit flavor to me. They're more savory than sweet, a little bit sweet, but more savory. They're very sort of puffy and buttery, unlike a biscuit, they do have a bit more softness to them, and obviously they have some flavor from that egg. But it's really interesting. There's a reason I would call these griddle cakes as opposed to pancakes because they're so different from what I think of as pancakes. That said, I made these for my kids the other day, and they ate them up. So that's a lie. My son ate them up. My daughter had one bite and said she wanted yogurt, which I don't think should be an insult to the pancakes. Kids are moody, so can't always trust their opinions. All right. Oh, someone says don't dishwash your aluminum. That is true. So this one, so you can see this one went through the dishwasher. There's a chemical reaction that happens. I can't remember exactly what the reaction is, but when you run it through the dishwasher, the detergents in there react with the aluminum and can create this kind of gray dust, which you'll need to wash off again afterwards before using. So yeah, as people say, don't run aluminum through the dishwasher, or if you are going to run aluminum through the dishwasher, make sure you wash it again by hand afterwards to get rid of that residue. All right, I have to get to a meeting. I've got a meeting at 1:30, but I'll be doing more of these live streams. I hope you enjoyed all of this. As always, if you I don't know why would I say as always that I don't always do these live streams, but it was good to see all you guys, gals, and non-binary pals. You can catch my podcast with Deb. It's coming out. The first episode is coming out February 26th. You can sign up for it now, though. In fact, I encourage you to subscribe to it now so that when it comes out, they'll start dropping into wherever you listen to your podcast. It's called The Recipe with Kenji and Deb. I lobbied hard to have it be called The Recipe with Deb and Kenji, but was outvoted in the end. Anyhow, guys, gals, non-binary pals, I'll see you next time. I hope this was fun. Bye-bye.